What if I told you that one enslaved man's knowledge saved millions of American lives, yet his name was almost erased from history? This is the story of Onesimus, the man who introduced the idea of vaccination to America long before science even had a word for it. In the year 1721, Boston was a city on edge. The streets were silent, the churches empty, and fear hung in the air like smoke. A smallpox epidemic was tearing through the population, a disease so deadly it could wipe out entire families in weeks. The numbers were terrifying. People were dying by the hundreds every month. It didn't matter if you were rich or poor. Once the fever hit, once those blisters started spreading across your skin, it was only a matter of time. Doctors were desperate. They tried bleeding patients, burning herbs, even praying for divine intervention, but nothing worked. And in the middle of that chaos stood a man no one would have listened to, at least not in that world. His name was Onesimus, an African man who had been enslaved and given as a gift to a Puritan minister named Cotton Mather. To the people of Boston, Onesimus was just another slave, but inside his mind he carried knowledge passed down for generations, knowledge that would change the course of medical history. One day Mather was speaking with Onesimus and asked if he had ever had smallpox. Onesimus replied calmly that he had, but not in the way the minister expected. He explained that back in his homeland, long before he was brought to America, people had already learned how to protect themselves from the disease. They would take a small cut on their arm and place a drop of pus from someone who had a mild case of smallpox into the wound. It would cause a small illness, a fever, maybe a few spots, but afterward they would never get smallpox again. It was called inoculation. To Mather, this sounded almost like sorcery. How could introducing a disease stop it? But Onesimus was certain. His people had used it for generations, and it worked. Mather, though skeptical, couldn't ignore it. He was a man of science and faith, and here was a chance to save his city. So he wrote about what Onesimus told him, recording the details carefully. But when he tried to share this knowledge with Boston's doctors and leaders, they laughed at him. They said it was barbaric, dangerous, a heathen practice brought from Africa. Some even accused Mather of trying to poison the population. He was mocked, threatened, and one night, someone even threw a bomb through his window. Still, Mather held his ground. He found a doctor named Zabdiel Boylston, who was brave enough to try the experiment. Boylston began inoculating people, first his own son, then his slaves, and finally volunteers. And the results were shocking. Out of the hundreds who got the inoculation, only a handful died. But among those who didn't, nearly 1 in 7 perished. The numbers didn't lie. The African method, Onesimus's method, worked. Word spread, slowly but surely. What started as a whispered idea from a slave became the foundation of modern vaccination, one of the greatest medical advancements in human history. Yet history barely remembers Onesimus. For centuries, the credit went to Cotton Mather, and later to European doctors who developed vaccination from inoculation. Onesimus's name faded into the background, as if his role in saving countless lives was just a footnote, or worse, an inconvenience. But without him, America might not have survived its earliest epidemics. Without him, the very concept of immunization could have taken decades longer to reach the Western world. Think about that. Millions more could have died. All because one man's knowledge, carried from his homeland, was ignored simply because of who he was. Today, we live in a world built on vaccines. They've saved billions of lives, from smallpox to polio to the modern day. But few know that it all began with the wisdom of a man who was never meant to be remembered. A man who lived enslaved, yet carried within him a cure for death itself. So the next time you roll up your sleeve for a vaccine, remember this name, Onesimus. Because while the world tried to silence him, history still whispers his truth. That knowledge knows no color, no chain, and no master. It only waits for someone brave enough to listen. That's the story of Onesimus, the enslaved man who taught a nation how to survive.